rude awakening for the U.S. Navy. A March 5, 1947 Chilean press interview of Admiral Byrd after the premature end of Operation High Jump suggested that there had indeed been a military failure and that there was a new threat located at the South Pole. Admiral Byrd declared that it was imperative for the United States to initiate immediate defense measures against hostile regions. The Admiral further stated that he didn't want to frighten anyone, but it was a bitter reality that in case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. It was clear that the best the U.S. Navy could muster was no match for the small but well-armed Nazi elite that survived the war in their remote Antarctic location. Indeed, the possibility that the Nazis were receiving alien assistance in fending off the United States attack could not be discounted. The Nazi efforts through occult groups to communicate with an advanced civilization may have resulted in the elite Nazis being assisted in relocating to the hidden Antarctic base and possibly receiving significant alien support from any attack by the United States and its allies. The victorious allies that formed the United Nations and whose principal members became the permanent members of the UN Security Council would cooperate in ensuring non-disclosure of the alien presence to their respective general publics and other national governments. This suggested that the United Nations Security Council provided an important forum for the permanent members to coordinate their respective national policies on aliens and ensuring non-disclosure of the alien presence and/or discovery of alien technology. The second major policy adopted for globally managing alien affairs was that the alien connection with Nazi Germany and the survival of the Nazi elite in remote locations in Antarctica and South America would not be disclosed to the general public and most elected public officials by those national governments aware of the Nazi exodus. This was to ensure that there would be no reemergence of the Nazi ideology as the basis of new national governments anywhere in the world, and of Nazi elites capturing a major state for promoting their Nazi belief systems. This posed considerable difficulties in South America, where many governments had strong pro-Nazi sentiments and had provided material support and safe havens for the Axis powers. Countries such as Antarctica, Paraguay, Chile, and Brazil were carefully watched due to strong pro-Nazi sympathies among political elites and the potential for these states to be vehicles for the spread of Nazism, fascism in the South American continent. Indeed, much of the Cold War struggle that occurred throughout South America was an effort to contain the spread of Nazism, fascism, and the need to rein in the influence of Nazi enclaves that influenced governments on this continent. The fear was that South America could one day become a vehicle for a renewed effort by the remaining Nazi elites for regional, if not global, domination. The Cold War struggle in South America was a covert means for the United States and the Soviet Union to minimize the threat posed by the escaped Nazi elite by exhausting South American states in a series of political and economic crises. These perennial crises would ensure that no South American state could ever achieve the kind of economic potential that would enable it to develop the industrial capacity and the technological base that would provide the Nazi elite with a vehicle for achieving a leadership role in regional and/or world affairs. The third major policy adopted for globally managing alien affairs was that all alien-inspired technology left by Nazi Germany was divided between the victorious powers of the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union in terms of who had possession of this technology or scientists in the respective zones of control in occupied Germany and former occupied territories. Each Allied state incorporated this technology into their respective military efforts aimed at weapons development and intelligence acquisitions. Each of the major Allied states had its own version of Operation Paperclip, where the United States sponsored the removal of Nazi scientists to the U.S., even in cases where they had strong pro-Nazi records, thereby violating U.S. immigration laws. These efforts of recruiting Nazi scientists were distinguished by the continuation of many Nazi-sponsored projects in the United States and Soviet Union. The expatriation of former Nazi scientists was particularly important in a number of fields where the Nazis used slave labor and/or unwilling human subjects in testing and developing extraterrestrial-inspired technologies. The restrictions on such experiments in the United States and other democratic nations meant that these Nazi scientists had a wealth of experience that could not be easily replicated in the U.S. and elsewhere. Areas in particular which were of interest to the Western nations aware of the alien presence were genetic and mind-controlled experiments aimed at optimizing human performance in extreme conditions. These experiments were secretly continued in the United States and other former Allied states with the purpose of bioengineering super soldiers who could display the kind of genetic and mental qualities for extremely high military performance in outer space. The testimonies of former participants in these experiments suggested that many of these former Nazi-sponsored genetic and mind-control programs were indeed used for producing super soldiers. Other areas of experimentation involve psychometric weapon development and experiments working with time-dimensional travel. A number of participants in these highly secret projects, sponsored by intelligence and military branches of the government, have come forward to give testimony of these projects. Preston Nichols claims to have been a former director of one of these projects and has testified to the use of children, the homeless, and other unwilling human subjects in continuing these highly secret experiments. Over the years, the Montauk researchers perfected their mind control techniques and continued to delve further into the far reaches of human potential. By developing the psychic abilities of different personnel, it eventually got to the point where a psychic's thought could be amplified with hardware and illusions could be manifested both subjectively and objectively. This included the virtual creation of matter. All of this was unparalleled in the history of what we call ordinary human experience. But the people who ran the Montauk Project were not about to stop. They would reach even further into the realm of the extraordinary. Once it was discovered that a psychic could manifest matter, it was observed that it could appear at different times depending on what the psychic was thinking. Thus, what would happen if a psychic thought of a book, but thought of it appearing yesterday? It was this line of thinking and experimentation which led to the idea that one could bend time itself. After years of research, time portals were opened with massive and outrageous experiments being. The fourth major policy adopted for globally managing alien affairs was that all alien artifacts found around the planet would be brought under the control of one or more of the victorious powers of the United States, Britain, the Soviet Union, and France. This meant that the post-war division of the globe into different spheres of influence agreed to at Yalta meant that most, if not all, alien technology